All right. Happy, happy poem, right? And I'm sorry, we're in tragedy. We'll move to comedy, as I said before, which is even more serious and even sadder. However, what was your gut reaction to hearing this poem?
It's lets you know how not everything you see it what it seems.
Not everything that you see is what it seems. Sometimes, yeah, as we look at, let's say, someone else, in this case, Richard Corey, we have a particular view that may not be true. And who was just saying that? I want to be able to see who's saying that. Jocelyn, great job. Yeah, absolutely. What makes you arrive at that view? What aspects of the poem?
It starts off and we see like this well-rounded, happy man, and then it ends with him shooting himself.
Terrible, huh?
Yeah, so like it's kind of what they say about suicide, like your happiest friends are the ones that need you to check on them the most, because even though they seem happy, they might not be happy.
Right. And sometimes we look at others perhaps and think that they are happy and consider our own lot, our own situation, and say, why can't I be as happy as that, right? Only to discover that maybe they're not so happy, right? And again, and this is for everyone, in today's world, when we're on social media and on Facebook and Instagram and everybody's sending you pictures, they're all pictures of their happy times, their happy meals, all those kinds of things that makes you wonder to some degree, what's wrong with me that I'm not like this?
You're just not seeing the other side of them.
We're not seeing the other side of things. And to connect it to an earlier lesson that we had, Plato's allegory of the cave, knowledge, truth, reality, and illusion. And I don't think that anybody on social media is trying to create an illusion of, I'm always happy. But the effect upon viewers sometimes is exactly that. Excellent, Jocelyn. Anybody else? Some gut level reactions to this poem? Okay, so let me ask you this question. Who's the speaker of the poem? It's not Richard Corey, because he's referred to.
A working person, maybe, that they're talking about?
Be confident about it. The working person, not maybe, a working person.
Yes, the working person for sure.
Okay. And when you say the working person, is it because we got we worked? And
that also the part about the bread instead of the meat. He's talking about maybe they can't afford like the food. So
yes.
Not only that, the way they honor him, the way he looks, they say he looks really pretty, or the way he carries himself, they just put him really up there.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And it is somebody other than Richard Corey, somebody not at the same status, at least in terms of economics. And absolutely. These are people who are looking on someone. And you said they really look up to him. Most of you spoke about that. And the words that the poet is using to set him up from that perspective to that perspective are words that are always associated with a king, with the highest member of a society. He was a gentleman from soul, meaning is from head to foot or foot to head. But he doesn't say head, he says crown, suggesting a kind of a king. Again, the word imperially suggests empires, emperors, kings. Quietly arrayed. I have a question here. This one always hits me. And he was always quietly arrayed, meaning he didn't dress ostentatiously and gaudy and trying to show off. And that's an admirable quality. And he was always human when he talked. Now, this course is the humanities. What do you make of that line? And he was always human when he talked. Dare to be right.
Maybe he always said the right things.
Like always had the facts and the truth and things like that. Okay. And generally we usually think that humans kind of can be fallible. They can make errors. If I changed the word and I said, and he was always, to make it like a 21st century idiom, and he was always real when he talked.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Honest, he was honest.
Yeah, honest.
Honest, sincere.
Maybe he spoke with compassion.
A little louder because some of you guys are a little muffled.
Maybe he spoke with compassion.
Spoke with compassion. Absolutely. a kind of a giving person. I mean, this is an individual who's above the common order, so to speak. And yet when anybody says hello to this guy, he's always willing to talk, and not in an insincere way, and not in a phony way, but in a real human way. And he was always human when he talked, but still he fluttered pulses when he said good morning. What does that mean to you? He fluttered pulses when he said good morning.
It makes your heart race.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, people get nervous. They're so impressed by this guy, right? Have you ever met somebody that really made you nervous to even be in their presence or speak to them? Well, sometimes we do. So whenever he just said good morning, and yet look what he says. He says good morning. He seems like a pretty nice guy. And he glittered when he walked, shiny. So the perspective of this working man that you mentioned, Philip, is that, wow, this guy is like shining. He's like a king. He's just amazing. And not only that, he doesn't show off. He's quietly arrayed. He is kind to everyone. He doesn't put himself above other people. And then we move into, and he was rich, yes, richer than a king. And there's that imperial theme again, this view of him as almost like a shining king upon a mountain. And admirably schooled in every grace. This guy was a total gentleman. He had it all. He was like Ryan Gosling in Crazy Stupid Love or something like that. I don't know if you've seen the film. In fine, what did they think about him? We thought that he was everything. To make us wish that we were in his place. What do you think about that line? And I know that it's difficult to kind of sometimes even be honest with ourselves. But did you ever wish that you were in someone else's place because your place was just not that good?
Yeah.
I always felt like if you took your best friends, all of us, whoever we are, thank you, Tim, for the thumbs up. If you put all your problems that you personally have into a hat, and everybody in the group put in all their problems into the same hat, and you got to choose which problems now became yours, I have a feeling you would all choose the very problems you yourselves put into that hat, that you would not select the problems of others because we really don't know them. Just a thought. Wish that we were in his place. And so they see this guy, and Philip, I think he nailed it on the head, and so on we worked. It seems like he gets to walk down the middle of the road, the middle of the street, when we people on the pavement looked at him. It's like he's the center of attention, and we're on this pedestrian kind of common level pavement. And so they see him walk by, and they go back to their lives. On we worked and waited for the light. And the word light has a lot of, remember the term, connotations. It isn't just literal waiting for daytime. What other kind of light could they be looking for?
Success, the light to a new life, maybe.
Okay. What else?
Or the light that the guy had, like his energy, like his inner shine.
Exactly. Waiting for this to happen to us to be able to shine. Absolutely. Anything else? When you see a cartoon and a light bulb goes up above the cartoon character's head, what has happened?
An idea.
They got an idea. They have what's called enlightenment. And all of the things you said, I think, are completely valid and so insightful, guys. And waited for the light. Waited to not only see the light of day, perhaps, but also enlightenment to get beyond this. And this enlightenment, this new idea, this new realization, let's just say, is going to come rather abruptly at the end of this poem. And they went out and they went back to their work, and they didn't have all the things that Richard Cory have, and as you pointed out again, Phil, and went without the meat. We couldn't afford the meat. And cursed the bread. This is a wonderful line, I feel, that the very little that they have, the little things, just the bread, when they're eating it, they're almost cursing it because they don't have other things. And I think it really gets into the speaker's kind of emotion there. And cursed the bread. Richard Cory, One Calm Summer Night. I like that, One Calm Summer Night. There isn't turbulence. There isn't turmoil. There isn't conflict. In the most mundane, calm summer night, he goes home and puts a bullet through his head. So when we read people from the outside, we have a particular idea about them. a particular image. We may, in a sense, bemoan our own situation and think that others have it better. But we don't know what's inside every individual's life. I always say that everybody owns their own pain. When people try to compare pain, oh, you know, my life was so terrible. Look at all these, the poverty game. I was so poor that my father wouldn't even allow us to turn on the heat in winter. And then the other guy responds with, really, you had heat? So everybody's misery. It's called the poverty game. How many of you guys play the poverty game?
Oh,
yes. My misery. I broke an eyelash. It's just miserable, whatever it may be. We don't know where the other person's coming from. And I want to, again, remind you of that quote from Socrates, who we've also studied. He says, be kind, because everyone is returning from a difficult struggle. We don't know. Okay, so now that we've got this rather cheerless poem here, perhaps we should stop looking at the other and Instagram and Facebook and how much everybody else must be having a great time. Why am I so miserable? And start not looking outside, but looking inside. One last thing about this, because it's just something that happened to me. I'm an immigrant to this country. And so by the time we got a television set, it was like the 70s or something like that. And there was a show called Happy Days. Are you familiar with Happy Days?
Yes.
Of course, right? And I was watching Happy Days, and there's Richie and the Fonz, and all these people, and they're all happy, and the family's together, and they eat, and they have all these wonderful values, and everything turns out all right. And I kept looking at this in a kind of delusion, going, everybody's so happy. What's wrong with us? And I came to the conclusion finally, there's nothing wrong with us. There's something wrong with that. That's an illusion. Stop buying into it. Stop thinking that, you know, oh, these celebrities who are at Lake Como, they must have the life. Oh, well, no one should be living the dream. We should all be living a kind of reality and dream. So enough of that kind of preachy stuff. Let me switch back out for just a second. Hi, guys. Who else has joined us? Turn on your videos. Aaliyah, I don't even know what you look like. Brian, turn it on. Dante. Jasmine, you're coming in and out. And the rest of you. We are going to go into just a quick review of some of the parts of tragedy. It is imperative that you ask me questions. Please do not be shy about this. Do not think, oh my goodness, I'm going to look unintelligent. You're all very intelligent. And the question that you ask me is probably the same question many others have asked. And lastly on this point, if you have not read the play, I'm not naive. If you have not seen the play, if you haven't even touched the play, and here you have an assignment, remember, something is always better than nothing. Let me help you now. So please ask me any kind of questions. If you don't know anything about it, say, could you tell me the story? Okay, I'll tell you the story. Well, how do I begin to answer this question? I'll break it down for you, but I need to know what you know and what you need, okay? All right, so I'm gonna switch out again, and hello everybody, I like seeing you. And let's go to this for a second. No, yeah. Okay, so you should be seeing the section that we're in. And I want to open up that before I go into the review, just so that we know what we're targeting here. So you have an essay on ancient Greek theater and Oedipus Rex. The term Rex means king, so Oedipus the king and all of that. The prompt, here you can watch the entire play. Did anybody see the play? Watch a piece of it? What'd you think, Jocelyn?
I started watching it, and then I kind of started falling asleep, so I need to
I appreciate the honesty. I understand. Believe me, I understand. So you kind of fell asleep. Did you see about 10 minutes?
Yeah, I saw like a good 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
What did you think of them coming out with their masks?
Yeah, that was it was a little weird. I didn't understand the masks, but I liked them.
They're kind of creepy, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They all have like a devilish shake to them.
The masks were fashioned, and this is the way the ancient Greeks actually did their tragedies. And you'll notice that the masks really represent the character emotion. So you see the mask of Oedipus with the king. but there's a kind of tragic quality to it. And when we see the blind seer, I'll talk about him in a little bit, Tiresias, the white mask, the long nose, and the dark eyes, he's blind, so he has no eyeballs, and where he can't see, but he can see into a future. And Yocasta, the wife, mother, the look of that is just sad, but very weird for our contemporary times. Anybody else see it? Anybody? Okay, here's your prompt. We said in our last session, or I should say Aristotle said, that the purpose of a tragedy is to arouse in the audience two emotions. Pity, for whom? Let me know. Pity for?
Oedipus.
Thank you, Brandon. Oedipus, the king, the main character. Fear is the other emotion. For what? Us, the audience. Okay? If the character is created in a way that we can relate, that touches a chord in our beings, that we can identify with, that we can relate to, and that in a lot of ways, because we are for the most part good people, we would probably do the same things that he did. If the plot is set up in such a way and we were in it, we would end up in the same way. And that induces fear. To put it in a little more, I guess, maybe simple way, let's say you're watching a horror film and you watch the character and she's just opening the door to her house. And inside the house is a slasher, murderer kind of guy. Now, how many of you have ever opened the doors to go home, into your home? All of you have, right? There's no choice making here. There's no decision that you knew beforehand, I shouldn't go in because there's a slasher there. So we might enter our homes at some point and there's a slasher there. I know that was very simple, but that's the idea of the plot, that if we are the kinds of people that Oedipus is, and we do these things within the confines of this plot, we probably end up gouging our eyes out, hopefully not, and smelling our way out of the city. So that's the fear part, that it's created and crafted in such a way that, oh my goodness, as I suspend my disbelief, as I'm watching this play and I'm involved in it, I'm carried along with the suspense and the tension. Oh my God, don't go there. Oh my, no. That oh my goodness part is us feeling like the character in the situation plot. And therefore, when the curtains come down, after we felt the pity, felt the fear, we purge it, we get rid of it, we go outside, and because we went through it, we have become stronger. Every time you go through something, pity, fear, loss, this, that, you are to some degree strengthened by that experience so that the next time it happens, it doesn't always touch as deeply. Now, that's not always the case. And certainly we don't want to become desensitized to compassion, pity, fear, whatever, simply because we've experienced it. But this is the concept. So the purpose of the play is to arouse pity in the audience for the hero, Oedipus, fear for themselves, and then purge them. And that experience is called catharsis, a cathartic experience. The question that I'm asking you to write about is, does the play actually fulfill the purpose? I don't want somebody else's ideas on this. You're the viewer, you're the audience. Did you feel pity for for Oedipus or not? And why? Was the character created in such a way that you couldn't relate to him? Was it like, wow, there are no kings and queens today, or is it that the fact that he's a king, not even an issue, that he's a human being, just like us? So you're going to look at that character and say, wow, he's got good things, and he's got bad things. Is he more sinned against than sinning? Those kinds of ideas. Did it arouse pity in you? There's nowhere you can go, no book, no cut and paste to answer that question except for you. So I don't want anything outside of you. Yes, I felt pity for the character because, as Aristotle noted, and we're going to get back into this in just a moment, he is for the most part good. He is realistic, so I could relate to him. He does have this flaw in his personality, but that's what makes him human. We all have these flaws. And oh my God, I've let my emotion get the best of my judgment in the past, and I've done an action that has led to a catastrophe that I didn't mean. So we can relate and we pity. You cannot pity a person who is vile, a person who is, contemporary monster. If our hero were a pedophile, I don't think, we're going to pity him. So whatever flaw the character has, it can't be a vice. It can't be something that we would just say, forget it. I have no sympathy. It has to be a flaw. And we'll get into that. The other part is the fear part. Is it, you tell me, when you're watching the play, and this is, I know, very artificial the way we're doing it, especially if you haven't sat through the whole thing. When you're watching the play, do you start to get involved in it and go, oh my goodness, don't keep looking, don't keep asking, this is going to lead to, no, oh my goodness, I'd probably do the exact same thing. So how many of you know who your parents are?
Yeah.
How do you know? You were told by your parents that they're your parents.
Mm.
How do you know?
Good question.
At birth you were adopted. They didn't want to tell you. And all your life you believed that these were your parents. Is it a frightening thought? How many of you are going to go right now and scramble to go and find your birth certificate to make sure that the names match? Or take a DNA test to find out who's your parents? I've met and know some people who most of their lives felt that these were their parents, only to discover that, oh my God, this is not my parent, and went looking for their biological parent. So this notion of Oedipus not knowing his parentage, his history, his fate, his future, who he is, and on a more, let's say, metaphysical level, or at philosophical level, we're all asking that, who am I? So here I've written for you, in order to answer your question in an essay form, perhaps a structure, an organizational device that you want to follow. All right? So the first part of the essay would be your thesis statement. Now remember, you are arguing, you are trying to persuade your audience that yes, the play fulfills the purpose of tragedy. It arouses pity and fear in order to have the catharsis. Or no, it does not. And why? So your thesis will make that statement. State an evaluation of how effectively Sophocles produces catharsis through pity and fear. Just to get it down to what we were just talking about. Do you feel that the play produces pity for the hero in you and fear based on the situation for you? Yes or no? Make that statement. State that you will support. You're going to prove your point, persuade me with evidence through an analysis of only 2 of the 6 parts of tragedy we talked about. Character. If you say you pity Oedipus, show me why. Go to sections in the play or in your summaries. Whatever you do, do not cut and paste. Okay? Just your ideas. What is it about this character that makes you feel sorry for him? Okay? And then you're gonna use a little Aristotle maybe. We're gonna go back to that so you'll get that in your minds. That he has to be, for the most part, good. That his thoughts and his intentions are indeed good, but they're going to lead to tragedy. That he is like the reality. He does have verisimilitude. We can relate to him because he seems human, not some superhuman god, some monster, or some animal. These kinds of things. And we'll go over the 4 qualities. And that's one way that you can approach the creation of a character like Oedipus Rex and why it becomes realistic enough for you to feel sorry for this person. Is there a movie, I know that's our culture now, wherein you feel pity for a character, sorry for a character? Any movie that you can think of?
Harry Potter.
Okay. Whom do you feel sorry for in Harry Potter? For Harry Potter himself?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not familiar. I know them. I had to read the books to my kids, believe me. But I'm just reading. I'm not really reading. So I don't know what's going on, you know. So when he was like at the beginning, when he was with the bad parents,
So when he was a baby, basically someone came and killed his parents and tried to kill him also.
Horrible.
Yeah, but he survived somehow.
Okay.
And then he grew up with his mom's sister's family.
Okay. Were they nice to him?
No, not at all.
See, it's that whole archetype of the step parents.
Yeah.
Step parents. By the way, this whole step parenting thing is, again, a misogynistic thing. It's an anti-woman thing, trust me, throughout history. But we'll go on with that. So you did feel sorry for Harry Potter at some point. And if you could analyze, well, what made it? Well, look at the situation. He lost his parents. Oh, I feel sorry for him. He's put in with these surrogate parents who are mean to him. Oh, my God, that's terrible. Could that happen to you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I hope it doesn't happen to me. Fear. All right. Any other example from a movie, perhaps? Feel sorry for someone, pity someone?
My first thing I thought of was Simba and Lion King.
Yeah, and you felt sorry for Simba?
Yeah, like when Scar kind of convinces him to go where he's not supposed to go, and then his dad has to come and rescue him.
Yeah.
And he pretty much gets stampeded by the wildebeest. That was pretty sad.
And then blamed for it, that little kid. I'm sorry, the little lion.
Yeah.
Blamed for it, the guilt put on this guy. And then, sorry, excuse me. And then he hooks up with the, what was it, a warthog and a...
Timon and Pumbaa, yeah, a warthog and a
meerkat, right? Yeah, right? And gives up basically on life in some kind of psychological way, right? Since the burden of guilt is so hard, he's going to say, what's the phrase that they use?
Hakuna Matata.
There you go. Where everything, forget it, life's just fine, right? I start to feel sorry a little bit then too.
Yeah.
And how about fear when he returns? The hero returns, if you will. Isn't the Lion King like the hero's journey? And it's, by the way, it's Hamlet. Did you know that the Lion King is Hamlet?
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And did you know, have you ever seen A Bug's Life?
Oh, yeah. Great movie.
That's the Seven Samurai. The American version would be the Magnificent Seven.
Mm-hmm.
So Disney's not, they know where the good stories come from. Okay. There may be others you may want to think about it in terms of movies or books that you have read rather than just Oedipus to understand this idea of pity. So you make the statement that, yes, I do think it produces pity and fear. And I think it's through the development of the characters and the plot. The way the character, we're moving into the body paragraphs now for evidence, character qualities and actions that inspire pity. So you're looking through, what is Oedipus doing? What kind of person is he that makes you feel sorry for him? You would cite sections. You can refer to the passage. You can quote a little bit. Don't overquote. And then that's what this is doing. Support through citation, reference to the play. So, in the scene where he can't help himself, he wants to know, he wants to save the city. And we understand that because he wants to save the city, he's a good guy, this is going to lead to a horrible end. I feel sorry for him. And I'm a pretty good guy. And if I were confronted, if people came to my front door and saying, we're hungry, we're dying, find out what's happening, most of us would start to find out. And what if you found out that why people are starving and dying is because of you? Oh, I'd get caught up in that. So the body paragraph, your first couple of paragraphs maybe, your thesis statement, I think it arouses pity and fear, and through the use of the development of character and the construction of plot. So you go in, okay, body paragraph, Oedipus is like this, Oedipus is like when he does this, when he does that, I start to feel pity. Take a short quote maybe, a speech he makes or a speech somebody else makes about him and inspires you with pity and you feel sorry for him. You might look at the chorus, you might look at his own statements. You might look at the conclusion at the end and that line that I delivered to you the other day. Seek to command here no more. Thy mastery broke before the end. Oh my goodness, he can't even have his little children with him. And is he at fault for all that has happened? Well, for some of it he is. And we'll talk about fate and free will if we want to in just a little while. So support it. All right. After you put in the quote, don't just let it sit there like a crouton on top of a salad. So here you're making a claim. Yes, the character's qualities inspire pity and fear in this way, this way, this way, and this way. You support that view through a quote, perhaps, or a reference to a passage, and then you discuss that quote or reference to the passage to demonstrate how indeed it shows it inspires pity. This is what creates a paragraph. Claim, support, what is called a warrant, discussion of the quote to show how it supports the claim, which supports your thesis statement. Everything goes back to the thesis. It's not an English course, I know, and please do not feel hampered about grammar or spelling or organization. Try the best you can. I'm really looking to see what you have done rather than what's not there. So I don't want anybody feeling, I can't write because thesis. Try and get it out. Then I would make a transition. The plot induces the fear, if you believe that. Now, remember what I said before, what Aristotle said before about a plot construct. If one thing causes the next thing, under the rule of necessarily, one thing will necessarily lead to another thing, you're trapped in that plot. If one thing can probably lead to the next thing, well, there's other options. I could get out of that plot. If one thing could possibly lead to the next thing, I'm out of that plot because it's a fantasy. But if every step along the way of the plot, if I were Oedipus and I'm confronted with people telling me there's plague, you're the king, what are you going to do about it? Of course, I'm a good king. I'm going to want to find out. And the closer and closer I get, I'm going to end up blind and leaving the city. You don't know that. But that's the fear. Yes, if I were this character, I'd probably do the same thing. Can you mention a movie, for example, where you relate to the character, and within the plot of the character of the movie, if you were that character, you would probably do the same thing and end up the same way? Anybody? A plot of a movie that's well constructed, that makes sense. If you were put into it, you'd probably do the same things and end up the same way. I don't know. I'm just going to throw one out of my top of my head. How about Saving Private Ryan? Has anybody seen that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, don't get me started. I also teach film, so don't get me started on it's not a good movie. It's a good idea. However, the Tom Hanks character, right? Right? He leads the platoon. He's given orders that he has to find this Private Ryan. Can he disobey those orders?
No.
No. So he's going to go. And he's going to have a fight here and then go someplace, and Private Ryan isn't there, so they go somewhere else, fight here, he's not here. They finally get and they find him. He doesn't even want to go home, right? And he fights and he dies at the end. Which of us, if we were decent, honorable soldiers, even though the premise is kind of ridiculous, would not do what Tom Hanks did if we felt that we had the courage to do it? And he's like every man to us. He was a school teacher, we find out, and at the end he is shot for really nothing. What a waste. But I would have done the same thing probably. I hope I'm not in that situation. There's where the fear comes in and the pity. Okay, so you transition into plot constructs based on cause and effect. Is it possible that he would go and find Private Ryan? Well, yeah, it's possible, but it's more than that. It's probable. He's a soldier. He has to follow orders. Wait a minute, it's even more than that. It's necessary. Tom Hanks's character is locked into this thing that's going to end up with him dead. What a pity. Hope I'm never in that situation. Fear for myself. So again, you support a citation. You'll talk about that cause effect and the construction of the plot and discuss that support. Transition out, conclusion. It's going to be seen from the above. In a sense, Oedipus Rex is a very Aristotelian play, producing exactly what tragedy should produce. Emotions of pity and fear are aroused in the audience, in myself. And when that curtain comes down, I think, thank goodness, that wasn't me. Okay?
I have a question.
Sure, thanks, Ara.
When it comes through the support through the citation, and especially when it's in reference to the play that we watch, did you want us to put on like minute 45?
Let's not.
minute 48 was the part that I'm talking about, or can I kind of describe?
Reference it.
Okay.
In the passage or in the scene where Oedipus says this to Jocasta. Yeah, I don't want, the only thing I don't want you doing is bringing somebody else's ideas or writings into yours. I want only your own reaction to it. No one here, and I'm not just speaking to you, I'm speaking to everyone. No one here is being graded according to their ability to write like Sophocles. You're being graded on your ability to address the prompt in your own way with your own intelligence and at those levels. So, you know, sometimes people out of stress or fear do the wrong thing. Pitiable and tragic. So don't do that. And look, I believe in you and I'm rooting for you. You're all really bright. Trust yourselves, have confidence in yourselves. And remember, whatever happens, something is always better than nothing. Don't let me give you that 0, okay? You will not fail if you make the attempt. So I'm not worried about citation marks at which minutes in the video or which scene and verse in the play. Just make sure that I'm oriented. I know which one you're talking about. And the other thing is I don't need a plot outline. I don't need to hear a summary of plot at all. I know the play very well, okay? You're arguing, yes, this play, it serves the purpose of tragedy, or it doesn't. It arouses pity and fear. Pity is aroused through our relation to the character, and fear is aroused by our involvement in the plot. And let me show you how. And that's it. Questions? Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to go to, this always happens, to my PowerPoint for just a moment. I got to stop the screen share. Remember, now is the time, and if you want to use the chat box to ask me questions, do it. Now's the time, guys. There are no bad questions. There really aren't. You should be seeing a PowerPoint. This one should be familiar to you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did.
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I'm giving you a heads up on what's coming up. Wait a minute here. It's just taking a little time to get loaded up here. Where are my philosophers? Okay, so this is the guy we're studying right now, Sophocles. You could use a little tan, I know. Oedipus Rex here. And just to review a little bit, and please stop me if you need to. We talked a little bit about the other works that Aristotle had dealt with. We talked about the logic and rhetoric and stuff like that. But we were going into the tragedy, and here again is the purpose of the tragedy, what it's supposed to do, and you're going to argue, yes, Oedipus Rex does exactly this, or it does not. And rather than dealing with, arouse pity and fear to purge them, and rather than going through all of this stuff here, I'm just asking you, maybe you want to focus on these two. Now, the character certainly is represented through the thinking, the thoughts they have, the intentions they have. And we know that Oedipus's intentions are noble. They're good. The diction is certainly elevated. And again, that expresses who the character is. So if you want to move into thought and character as part of character, you can. Thought and diction, sorry. As part of character, you certainly can. But we're really looking at these two. And then as we moved into the plot section, this is what I was asking you to look at. Does the setting up of the characters in the situation, there is Oedipus, there is Creon, there is Jocasta. Here are and there are the Theban citizens. And what's the situation? The play begins with the Theban citizens coming to Oedipus's palace and clamoring about there's a plague on Thebes. Women can't bear children. The crops aren't bearing fruit. So they come to their king. He is the guy who is the solver of riddles. Remember, I told you that? And remember, the play begins not with the mythology, not with the killing of the father, and then the importance of the marrying of the mother. That's taken place. All the prophecy has come true. That's done. The rest is not fate, but free will. So they come to him and they say, you know, Oedipus King, can you find out what's wrong with us? So do you feel that Oedipus would react and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to go find out what's wrong with Thebes in the play? Would this king do this? Yes is the answer. In fact, he says, I've already sent out Creon, my brother-in-law, who's his uncle, to the Oracle at Delphi to find out what's going on. Okay, that's the exposition. The characters are set up. The situation is set up. The complication comes in when Creon comes back from the Oracle at Delphi. Now, oracles do not tell you the future. You consult with them. They sometimes give you suggestions that you can derive your own conclusions from. And the oracle has told Creon, as Creon is telling Oedipus, that there's a person amongst us, a man amongst us, who has done such an evil and heinous, egregious act that it stinks up to the heavens. And the gods are punishing Thebes for this man. And the oracle says that we have to banish, remove this man from our country, or kill him, and that will end the plague. Let's say you're the boss of a business, and your employees are all suffering for whatever reason. And your vice president comes up and says, look, there's somebody amongst us that's causing this. Would you, as the employer, as the boss, try to find out who it is? Yes or no? I'm seeing nodding heads. Use your voices, guys. Yes.
Yes.
So what has happened? The plot is thickened. Now there's a person amongst us. When I consider Oedipus's character, I told you the other day, his main trait is solver of riddles. He solved the riddle of the Sphinx so that he can become this great hero in Thebes. So when presented with a riddle, there's a man amongst us who has done this, I will find it out. He will necessarily go and investigate. And that's the complication. Let's find this man. What's the challenge? Well, we're going to look here, we're going to look there. And if you've read the play to some degree, you'll note that whenever he is answered, Tiresias finally, he didn't want to tell him at first, and I'll explain that in just a moment, finally says, you are the man. How does Oedipus react? Can't be. Blind to it. Can't be me. I wouldn't do. Starts to accuse Tiresias of conspiring against him. When Creon's telling him the same thing later on, again, he thinks that no way this isn't true. Now, this is part of his character, isn't it? Part of his character. The challenge is to find out who he is. Let me speak about Creon for just a moment. I'm sorry, about Tiresias for just a moment. He is a blind seer. This is a guy who can prophesize, can see into the future. So let me give you the myth behind Tiresias. Tiresias was once a woman, and he transformed and became a man. So he had, I know that in a binary sense, he had both experiences, knows what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And moving that to the side for just a moment, you also know that Zeus likes to go around and have adulterous affairs with many different women, mortal women, and that his sister wife, Hera, is not very happy with this thing, right? So they are arguing, no, you shouldn't be allowed to have affairs. Zeus makes the point that he has a right to have affairs. That as a man, he's allowed, look at the mythology and how it affects, to have other concubines besides Hera. And Hera says, no, that makes no sense. So Zeus says, I'll tell you what, let's get a judge. Let's get somebody who knows both sides of the issue to judge whether or not men should be allowed to have more affairs and women should not. And so they decided on Tiresias because he's had both sides, referred to as old man with woman's dugs. So he's breasts. So he's had both sides. And they posed the question to Tiresias. Is it okay for men to have multiple affairs while women should not? And Tiresias' answer was yes. And here's his rationale. Women bear children. So they must wait. And men are there to propagate the species. So they should be able to propagate the species with whomever they want, as many as they want, whereas a woman should not. Then the other reason he gave is women have 10 times the sexual satisfaction, if you will, as men. So in other words, a woman's orgasm is 10 times the intensity of a man's. And therefore, a man should be allowed to have, let's say, 10 concubines to every... What do you think about that rationale?
That's stupid.
Kind of wacky.
Let's use more words rather than stupid and wacky, but yeah, what else?
It's weird.
It's kind of false logic and this and that, right? By the way, this is the same kind of logic that's still being used by a lot of people. However, you can bet Hera was upset because she felt the way you did about it. It's wacky, it's unfair, it's ridiculous, false logic. So what does she do? She strikes him blind, blinds this guy. Zeus wants to, he can't take away the blindness. One God can't take away another God's, actions, but he can give something. And so he gives Tiresias the ability to hear, to translate and interpret the sounds and songs of birds. Anybody who can translate and interpret the songs of birds can see into the future. The idea being is this, birds are so high up that they're closer to the gods in a sense. They oversee things. They can see the totality of things, that they have the ability to prophesize. And in various mythologies from around the world, birds often are harbingers of a future. It's a dove that comes down to tell the Virgin Mary that she will have the child of God. It's a dove, again, that lets Noah know that there's land. So birds, it's a raven and Poe, comes from the other side, from an understanding of fate and can foretell the future. So Zeus gives Tiresias the ability to foretell the future. Take Tiresias now into this play. Tiresias knows it's Oedipus who is seeking Oedipus. Tiresias also knows where this will end. He can see into the future. He is reluctant to tell him it's him, to Oedipus, because he knows how Oedipus is going to react. He's going to start chastising him, ridiculing him, telling him you're a liar. He won't believe him. So that's his first resistance to telling him. He knows what the outcome's going to be. But he eventually does tell him. And even though Tiresias is physically blind, he can see intellectually into a future. Oedipus is physically sighted, but intellectually blind. So one could trace the theme of blindness. Those who actually choose to remain blind intellectually, like Yocasta, she doesn't want to know. I don't want to know I'm sleeping with my son. But also Oedipus himself is blind to his own fate, blind to his own heritage, ancestry, who his parents are, what he's doing, what his actions will lead to. Kind of the way we go through the world, right? Do we know what this will lead to? All of you are in this class right now because you believe that this will lead to a better future, right? Right?
Yeah.
These are all good intentions. These are all good intentions. But we don't, and it will. Trust me, it will. But we don't know what every one of our actions is going to lead to. I've only been married once, so I'm and still. Anybody ever been married? We don't have to go with marriage. How many of you ever had a significant other and you thought you knew them, and then one day the scales fall from your eyes and you recognize you're in a really abusive or unhealthy relationship or whatever it may be? We thought that our actions of sharing and loving and trusting in this person or another didn't turn out the way we wanted. Okay. So you're looking at the plot. The challenge is to find the person. The conflict is internal. Oedipus is getting closer and closer and closer to solving the riddle. Everything is beginning to point to himself. And he's conflicted. Now, Yocasta's main trait is not solver of riddles. When it's getting too close to home, she says, seek not to know, question no more, stop it. Oedipus can't help himself and goes for it. And the climactic moment is that moment where Oedipus has now the proof that it was him. Because of what he has done, Jocasta cannot remain blind to this, but she can't bear it. And therefore, she goes and she hangs herself. And Oedipus loved his wife, mother, and his 4 children. I told you this the other day. He goes back there, sees his dead wife, takes the brooches, and gouges out his eyes. Now, is that a rash act?
No.
No.
Rash means impetuous, done without thinking.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Have you ever actually hurt yourself because you did something? Oh, bam, wasn't thinking. It was a rash act. It had nothing to do with fate. The oracles didn't say Oedipus would gouge his eyes out. The oracles didn't say Oedipus has to die. All you have to do is walk out. But because of his character, and remember I told you, he refused to move out of the way for that king, right? Out of pride, out of rashness, impetuosity, ego, pride, name it. Kills the king, fulfills the fate. And it's this moment of rashness, of impetuousness, of this anger that's inside of him, prone to violence, emotion and spirit dominating his reason, that he gouges his eyes out. There was no need to it. But when he finally saw the truth in his mind, he could no longer bear to see the truth through his eyes. He gouges them out. Climactic moment. And he comes out onto the stage, blind, bloody. And the denouement is, he's got to leave the city. And Creon is taken over, telling him he has to go. And the only thing he wants, as I told you the other day, please let me have my children, my little ones. What did he do wrong? Yes, he's impetuous. Yes, we know before the play begins, so this isn't part of your discussion. Nothing that's outside the play, the myth I told you, but we know him to be a proud individual, an individual who won't want to see the flaws in himself, a rash and impetuous individual. The moment he's confronted and Tiresias tells him, you are the man himself, no, you're not, there's no way you're conspiring against me. How many of you have a hard time when somebody is, let's say, brutally honest with you and you want to get defensive and no, I'm not, you know? We tend to do that as a defense mechanism. And that's a climactic moment. And then the falling action, the denouement, is we see Oedipus now gone. Very sad story, don't you think? Very sad story. You know, I know of a couple, a family actually, and this happened a long time ago. And they were neighbors. And they were a loud family. Certainly not an abusive family, but a very loud family. And some other person had contacted social services on this family because of this yelling that went on. And the social service came in, and you should understand that social services has to investigate when called, and snatched the kids away. You know, and it takes time. Snatched them away. I would have to say, oh, you know, parents argue. I know that wasn't abusive in whatever they were young. But from the outside, they look at this and they go, you know, you made this mistake. You yelled. Boom, lose your kids. I haven't seen them in a long time, but the kids came back. And they were given then an A rating and told, stop the screaming and the yelling. But oh my goodness, that was a mistake. They yell out of love, maybe even, I don't know. Out of fear. But because of that, tragedies can befall. And I know the father of this child. This was a long time ago, so they're all adults. And he loved his kids. And the taking away of his kids and the violation of himself he felt, and this constant feeling of guilt, why did I yell, destroyed him until they were returned. Sorry for all the happy news we're having here. So let's go to this. That's the fear part. We know about that already. In order for you to feel pity for the hero, I said you have to relate to that hero. He has to be realistic to you. He can't be, Aquaman who can, it's not tragic with Aquaman. He can go underwater for forever. Epic heroes aren't what we're looking at. Gods aren't what we're looking at. We're looking at the more human, the more we can relate to the hero. And so there are 4 qualities that you might want to look at to see, does this hero inspire me with pity? Is he created to be, for the most part, good, noble? Yes, he has flaws. Yeah, he has pride. Yeah, sometimes he's rash and impetuous, hot-headed or whatever it is. But he is, for the most part, a good guy, wants to be a good king, wants to save a city. The second one is, does he act like a king, like a leader? So I would say when the people come to him and say, hey, the city's got plague, are you going to do something about it? As king, he can't help himself. That's right, I'm the king, I'm the leader. I got to take the responsibility. Sometimes, unlike leaders we may have, he has to take the responsibility and the action. There is propriety and the way he goes about it. Thirdly, is Oedipus created realistically? Well, I will just tell you right now, the very fact that he has qualities that we can describe as pride, hot-tempered, rash, impetuous, love, these are human qualities. And they are created in a way not to make him the tortoise and the hare, right? These cardboard, flat characters, two-dimensional characters. Hi, I'm a villain. Hi, I'm a good guy. This isn't Dudley Do-Right and Snidely Whiplash. Good guy, bad guy. No. There is a complexity to him. And so that creates him as something true to life. I'll tell you, there are a couple authors, I'm not saying Sophocles is one of them, that create characters that are more alive and more complicated than anybody I've met. Hamlet is one of them. Falstaff is another one. Some of the characters in Charles Dickens are just walking human beings. It's an amazing ability to do. And the fourth is consistency. He can't be king and proud and want to save the city today, but also confront with this and say, I'm going golfing. No, that's not Oedipus. And if that were to happen, if he were not consistent, it would jar us from suspension of disbelief, and we go, that's kind of ridiculous, right? Sort of? Okay. Those are qualities of character that you may want to take a look at as you talk about pity. Yes, he is good. He doesn't deserve this ending. Look, he's doing what a king should do, propriety. He's so much like me, or he's so much like my dad or my mom. Oh my goodness. Because he's a consistent person who is good and real to life, he's going to keep looking and looking until he finds the answer, and that's going to destroy him. Oh, I wish he were a different guy. Pity, such pity. Okay. We talked a little bit about the thing that brings about the tragedy. It can't be a meteor coming out of the sky hitting him in the head. That's pathetic. It has to come from his choices based on his character. So you might want to look at it this way. Is he a hero, the main character, who suffers more than he deserves? My answer would be yes. Is he a hero who must be doomed from the start, but bears no responsibility for possessing his flaw? Well, he is doomed from the start. The prophecy was he's going to marry his father, and whatever. That was already done. He had no responsibility for being born. It's not my fault that I was born. But he should take responsibility for his flaw. This is that defense mechanism I talked about. We don't like to see the flaws in ourselves, certainly not being told. The hero must be noble in nature. That doesn't mean he has to be a king or a member of the nobility. It means that for the most part, his intentions, his soul, if you will, is good, but imperfect, because no human being is perfect. And that allows us to relate to him. That makes him like the reality. The hero must have discovered his fate by his own actions, not by things happening to him. It is Oedipus who is seeking to find out what's wrong. If Oedipus stopped seeking, the outcome would be different. But again, we wouldn't admire him. The hero story should arouse fear and empathy. Oh my God, if I were him, I'd end up the same way, and I sympathize. We talked about that. The hero must be physically or spiritually wounded by his experiences. I think Oedipus is both. Physically wounded, the eyes, and spiritually wounded. I killed my father. I married my mother. My children. Often resulting in death. Now remember, sometimes tragedies don't end in death, and this one doesn't. The hero must be intelligent, so he may learn from his mistakes. You can't have a recognition that you've been a fool unless you're an intelligent person. Unless Oedipus is intelligent enough to recognize, oh my God, what folly. I kept running from my fate, smack dab into my fate. And all these other actions that I took has made it worse. It's like me trying to fix anything. Every time I take something apart, rather than fixing it, I make it worse. The hero must have a weakness. That's the flaw, not a vice. You can't be, like I said before, a pedophile or a rapist or something that's not forgivable. It is a flaw, a weakness. Have you read any of the Shakespeare, like a Romeo and Juliet? And what their weaknesses, what their flaws might be? Or an Othello, or Macbeth, or Hamlet, or Lear, or any of these tragic characters. What is that quality of the character that is a flaw? He has to be faced, the hero, with a very serious decision that he has to make. That's the challenge in the story, right? Exposition, we got plague, help us. I have to take care of this. I have to look at this and find out. And in the very taking care of it, he destroys himself. So I'm open to some specific questions at this point about the essay you're about to write. So let me switch out of this one. Everybody still with me?
Yes.
How many of you feel this is going to be very difficult?
No.
While you're thinking about it. Okay, Dante, yes, the response in paragraph form, it's kind of like an essay form. So there's no hard and fast rule to how many paragraphs in an essay. The only rule for the paragraph is topical unity. It's all about the same topic. So I would suggest a 5-paragraph essay, perhaps. And if you go back to where maybe more than that actually, but if you go back to that outline that I provided, your first paragraph will be your introduction with the thesis statement. Then you move into 2 to 3 body paragraphs. In this case, it may be 2. Pity in the character, next paragraph. And you can subdivide those if you needed to. The next paragraph, fear and the plot. The next paragraph, conclusion. So in this case, I gave you 4. All of those can be subdivided. But yes, I also know that when you submit your work into the comment box on Canvas, it throws some of your formatting off. I can follow that. But the answer to that question is yes. Anybody else? No other questions? Should I tell you the play?
Yep.
Because most of you haven't read it. Please be honest with me, everybody.
Yes, tell us the play.
Tell me where you need help. That's what I want to know. Where do you need the help? Okay, so I gave you the backstory. All the mythology, right? Now remember, for the Greeks, it's all about, and this transition into humanism. No more animal fables and no more gods and all of that, instead of human story. So it's important that Sophocles starts the play not with the mythology. There was a prophecy and all that stuff I told you in the last session. It starts with Oedipus having already fulfilled that fate, and the rest of what we see is free will. The people are coming up to him because plague has hit. The gods have, in effect, cursed Thebes because of this action of Oedipus's. As solver of riddles, when confronted and needing to be the king and help, save the city again, he goes off to find out what's going on. And as I told you, the people, the Oracle of Delphi says, there's one amongst you who has committed this horrible crime, and you have to banish him. So he goes out in search for all these things. Now, in a play like this, because the outcome is ironic, isn't it? Oedipus's intention is to go to save the city again, as he did the first time from the Sphinx. He wants to save the city. He wants to provide for the citizens. He wants people, the trees to bear fruit, the women to bear children, all these kinds of things. These are all good and noble things. And by the way, when the people come up to him at the very beginning of the play, Oedipus has already sent his brother-in-law out to the oracle. He's on the job. He's not sleeping. He's on the job. And he's confronted. Here's how we solve this. So, of course, Oedipus wants to save his city. There's someone amongst us. Intrigued by the riddle, he must act out of necessity, and he does. And he brings in Tiresias. And Tiresias ultimately tells him it's you. He won't believe it. But then, remember I told you in the story earlier on that when he was a child, a shepherd had got him and taken him away, chained him to the side of a mountain where his feet were swollen, that's why he's Oedipus, swollen foot. And then another shepherd from Corinth, where his original country's from, took the child. These shepherds are going to be brought back. They're going to be brought back. And so little by little, the riddle is being solved. And that, as Oedipus goes through these machinations, and all of a sudden, boom, he can't blind himself to this anymore. He knows it's himself. I wouldn't even want to ask you, how would you feel? We don't want to go there. And what happens is, he takes his eyes out and he leaves. Didn't have to take his eyes out. That was free will. That was more of that consistency of character that we talk about. He is a rash person. He is a proud person. He cannot bear to see what he has done. And this action need not have taken place. He could have left the city, walked back to Corinth, and been king of Corinth. But he couldn't handle the weight of what he had done. And ultimately, I also think he does not blame the gods. He does not necessarily blame the fate. He understands that his own free will, his own choices, his own character, makeup, and those traits has led him to make more mistakes and ultimately to the complete fall and tragic catastrophe that is Oedipus Rex. That's basically the story, right? A story about a human being who can't bear the weight of his actions, the situation that he is thrust into, kind of like us, right? We came in and asked you at the very beginning, how do you know your parents are your parents? You came up and one day it's like a pebble cast upon the shore. Here I am. And everybody's telling you, I'm dad, I'm mom, I'm friend, this is America, whatever it may be. And we buy into it blindly. And when somebody would come to you and say, no, like the characters in the allegory of the cave of Plato, no, what you're seeing is just an illusion. This is the truth. This is it. At first, we are resistant.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be great. And one of the lessons perhaps to learn, if there is a lesson in tragedy, and there is that it's best to see who we are rather than seek out who everyone else is. Begin with the self. Know thyself. So from Socrates, we studied Plato, we studied Aristotle focusing on these qualities, to Sophocles producing a play that, it doesn't matter if it's a king, it doesn't matter if it was the 5th century BCE, it could be the guy at the store, the salesman, 21st century. It's a tragedy. Other questions? Do you feel a little bit more comfortable about the assignment, guys?
Yes.
Okay. The only thing you have to do is do it. And remember, I know it's a challenging thing, and I'm planning on being as absolutely generous as I possibly can. But please do not, out of fear, which may be your tragic flaws, not produce something. Even if what you're giving me and you're just, I can't get through it, are a series of questions or insights based on even this lecture, but please try and do what I'm asking you. You have an outline form that you can follow. And I'm here. You can email me throughout the day. I know I extended it one day, but you have till tonight if there's a real question. All righty? Guys, as usual, fantastic. I hope you have nothing but comedy in your life. And as we transition into comedy, next time we meet on Thursday, I put something up there that I think I want you to think about. just for a moment, until we get there. And that is this. It's what Racine said. He said, life is a comedy for those who think and a tragedy for those who feel. Well, I think and feel, so my life's a tragic comedy. Have a safe night. Email me if you need help. Let me know. All right. And we will see each other again on Thursday. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome, everyone. I hope your lives are nothing but fun. Take care.